piece is called En bas tu vois. The way that I kind of understand it to mean is from below you'll understand. When I recorded that piece, I actually kind of did it in a backwards way. I recorded it at the Museum of Jurassic Technology. With that piece, I was working specifically for the recording with Maddie Barbier, who's a local trombonist and bagpipe player. Basically just had Maddie playing held tones. And then I went back to my studio and I edited everything up, and then I kind of built the piece from those building blocks, and then created the score based on that recording. The way that I've worked, it's kind of a mix of working in this new way of writing for other instruments, but also in a way that's similar to like the electroacoustic roots of when I started making my own music, of just being able to record things and then edit it together into music and then breaking it down again and having it be performable by people who aren't me. My name is Sarah Davachi. I'm a musician and composer, and we are in Los Angeles. Technically, we're in Culver City at the Museum of Jurassic Technology. What's interesting about this place is that it uses the moniker of museum, which gives it an air of like knowledge and, you know, some kind of authority on knowledge, but a lot of the way that the exhibits work is very, is it true, is it not, what is the boundary of what they're trying to say? Sheeted mirrors. Mirrors should be sheeted or draped during thunder or lightning storms, and photographs should be turned to face the wall as well. Similarly, mirrors should be shrouded in the sick room or in the presence of death or dying. Here we have some fasting spittle. So this is a close-up of an ant egg. It creates that kind of sense of like being in this fictional narrative space where it doesn't really matter whether it's true or not. It just kind of is about the feeling that it creates. When people are visiting LA, like friends are coming and I tell them you have to go to the Museum of Jurassic Technology because it has the word museum in it, you tend to get some idea of what it might be like. Try not to describe what it's actually like to anybody because you can't really describe it. It is sort of that sense of like wandering into a very curious, mysterious place. There's just something about like the level of detail also here that, again, I feel like is something that I try to strive for in my music as well, where you can just kind of feel like you're pausing and like just exploring things or looking at something in a very close and like intimate way. So we're in the atrium courtyard of the museum. They do a lot of live concerts here. I played here in 2017 with Laura Steenburge and Eric Clark. We had a little setup back here. It's like the one outdoor space of the museum with the resident doves and these new birds. They have a lot of exhibits here that create almost like a diorama. It just creates this dimension in the experience when you're engaging with the object, which I think is a good parallel to how I think about my music being dimensional, being able to like kind of pause and just sort of listen to things happening in this environment around you. This exhibit I'm reading is called Miracles and Disasters in Renaissance and Baroque Theater Mechanics. It's essentially just models of like theater depth. So this one, like even the depth that you see sitting here and then having the sort of screen area and then having it be so far projected into it, and then even on the image itself having that kind of depth created. It creates this space for you to really like stop and look. This room as well, it's comforting in a way because it's about dogs, but there's also this weird like Soviet aspect to it. And then there's just an organ randomly behind us. It's an organ that was built by Story and Clark, I think like late 1800s, early 1900s, that sort of era. It's a reed organ. When air goes into the instrument, it vibrates to create the sound. And then you have reeds of different lengths, depending on the pitch. And it's completely acoustically powered. So to get the air going, you actually have to pump it with your feet. So it's a full body experience to play it. But I think people don't realize that organs come in all shapes and sizes and that there are also really small organs. These are called harmoniums. Specifically, you would see these used in a lot of classical Indian music. This one, you would pump it with one hand back here, the bellows, and then you'd play it with the other hand. When you're playing this instrument, there's a kind of intimacy that I think is really unique. And I like being able to focus on those really delicate, minute sounds. And when you're playing an instrument like this and it is just so quiet and there's nothing else happening, it almost makes the listener uncomfortable because it forces you to kind of just stop and actually listen. All of the minute changes that I make, you hear them right away. Whereas in a large cathedral, for instance, they might be drowned out by other things happening. It's a bit easier to hide them because it is such a big space. So what's so special about organs is that each one is quite unique, partly because of the instrument and because of the space that it's in. So every time you play an organ, it's a different kind of thing. You're really connected physically to the sound. Like you get that sense of, you know, when I do this, this happens and it creates this feeling in this space, and that's a really special kind of experience. Before the pandemic, I was separating the way that I would work on records and in the studio from the way that I would work live, and they didn't really interact in any meaningful way. And I think having the live aspect removed and then coming back into it, I've realized how much it actually informs the way that I think about composition generally and the way that I approach my music. So for me, it's a really important way to exercise being able to have that time and space to just let the sound happen without being constricted to, like, you know, it has to fit on an album or whatever, so it has to be a certain length. In my music, one thing that's really important to me is a sense of space, and it happens in different ways. Like there's the space of the music itself, of like what you're actually hearing when you're listening to it, of the dimensionality that the sound creates. But then in a more extraneous way, there's also the space that the music is happening in. It allows you to hear the music in a different way, and I like to use that to my advantage. So oftentimes the concerts that I play, they're in specific spaces that are meant to create that similar kind of environment, which is why I played so many concerts here, because it does naturally create that environment. I love performing music and I love performing my own music. It really informs the way that I think about the music that I write. Like it's a really specific component of my compositional practice. But the novelty of writing something for other people to play and just being able to sit and listen to it being played is really, it's a novelty that hasn't worn off yet. And that every single time it's like an amazing, magical thing that you can like write things on paper and other people understand it and you create this sound. It's a very special type of communication.